It was August 12th, 2000. The Barents Sea lay still a frozen mirror stretching endlessly north of Russia's Kola Peninsula. Beneath it, hidden under hundreds of feet of Arctic water, the pride of the Russian Northern Fleet was preparing for war games. The Kursk, a 505-foot nuclear submarine capable of carrying 24 cruise missiles, was not just a weapon. It was a message, a statement that Russia was still powerful, still untouchable, still a force beneath the ice. Inside, 118 men went about their routine. The crew had trained for months for this exercise, a mock torpedo strike against enemy ships. Spirits were high. The Kursk had a reputation for invincibility. Its titanium hull was said to be unsinkable, but deep beneath the sea, where light fades and pressure turns metal into silence, even invincible things can break. At exactly 11:28 a.m., a torpedo was loaded into tube number 4. It was an older model HTP-fueled, powered by concentrated hydrogen peroxide, a volatile chemical that, when contaminated, could decompose explosively. But on that morning, no one thought of danger. The crew had done this hundreds of times before. The command was given. The torpedo slid into the chamber. Pressure equalized, then a spark, a hiss, a chain reaction that would become one of the most haunting maritime disasters in modern history. The explosion came without warning. A shockwave tore through the forward compartment, vaporizing air, men, and metal in a fraction of a second. The control room convulsed. Lights flickered. The submarine, designed to withstand external pressure, was ripped apart from within. 2 minutes later, at 11:31 a.m., a second, larger explosion detonated as other torpedoes in the forward bay ignited. On the surface, Russian ships monitoring the exercise registered a seismic event. For a moment, they thought it was part of the drill. They had no idea their flagship was dying beneath them. The Kursk fell nose first to the seafloor 350 feet below. Inside, chaos turned to darkness. The shockwave crushed bulkheads, jammed doors, ruptured fuel lines. But in the aft compartments, 3 men survived. They stumbled through choking smoke and freezing seawater to compartment 9, the last watertight section at the stern. Among them was Captain Lieutenant Dmitry Kolsnikov, the ship's engineer. In the pitch black, with the emergency lights gone, he took command. He began to write. On a scrap of paper torn from a notebook, Kolsnikov recorded names, times, what he could piece together. All the crew from compartments 6, 7, and 8 moved to the 9th. He wrote, "There are 23 of us here." The ink trembled across the page. He knew the clock was already running out. Batteries were dead. Air purification was failing. The temperature was dropping. Every breath consumed oxygen they didn't have. Above the surface, the Russian Navy still believed the Kursk was simply delayed. Hours turned into a day. The rescue ship Mikhail Rudnitsky was dispatched, but it carried outdated equipment deep sea submersibles designed decades earlier. When they reached the coordinates, they found nothing but silence. The Kursk was somewhere below, invisible to sonar. Only after 24 hours did they finally detect its shape on the seabed, a dark scar beneath the ice. Still, there was no response, no signs of life. No pings, no hope. But inside compartment 9, the survivors refused to die quietly. They had sealed the watertight hatch. The emergency lamps flickered with what little battery they had left. Men scratched notes to loved ones on scraps of paper, stuffed them into pockets in case their bodies were found. The air was thick with carbon dioxide. Oxygen candles, chemical cartridges that release oxygen when ignited, were their only lifeline. But in the damp, confined space, even those became dangerous. One candle, improperly activated, caused a flash fire. Flames spread across oil and insulation. Smoke filled the compartment. Some men collapsed instantly. Others suffocated silently, unable to escape. Within minutes, nearly half were gone. By the second night, the sea itself had become their coffin. The temperature dropped close to freezing. Condensation formed frost along the metal walls. The men's breath hung in the air, visible even in the darkness. Kolesnikov kept writing. It's 13:15. All personnel in the 9th compartment are moving to the second line of shelter. He scrawled, his handwriting weakening. We feel the pressure increasing. We will not last long. It would be his last message. Above, a desperate battle unfolded between pride and humanity. Norway and Britain offered help within hours of the explosion. Their deep-sea rescue teams could reach the Kursk quickly, but the Russian Navy refused. They feared revealing the secrets of their nuclear subs to the West. Instead, they sent their own divers under-trained, under-equipped, and racing against time. For days they struggled to latch their rescue capsule onto the Kursk's escape hatch. The sea was rough, the current unpredictable. Every attempt failed. By day 5, the world was watching. Families of the crew gathered in Murmansk, clinging to rumors that tapping had been heard from inside. A journalist recorded one mother screaming at an admiral, "They're alive down there. Why aren't you saving them?" He looked away. He knew the truth that by then the men were already gone. 72 hours after the explosion, oxygen levels in the aft compartment dropped below survivable limits. Darkness gave way to silence. One by one, they fell asleep, never to wake again. When Norwegian divers were finally allowed to descend 8 days after the disaster, they found the Kursk twisted and broken, the hull torn open like a crushed can. The divers pried open the rear escape hatch. Inside, they found nothing but cold black water. Later, when the submarine was raised from the seafloor a year later, they recovered Kolesnikov's notes, sealed in a waterproof bag. His final line reads simply, "None of us can get out." The investigation that followed revealed the truth the Navy already suspected. The first explosion had been caused by a leak of hydrogen peroxide from a faulty torpedo, a design flaw known since the early 1990s. Engineers had warned that the fuel could corrode if stored too long, that even a small impurity could trigger detonation. But budgets were thin. The Navy reused old munitions to save money. On paper, it was efficient. In practice, it was fatal. There were other failures too. The rescue subs that could have saved the survivors had corroded connectors that didn't fit modern hatches. The emergency beacons on board the Kursk small boys, meant to automatically release in case of disaster, had been welded shut. To prevent them from accidentally activating during exercises, they never deployed. And while the men suffocated below, Russian television aired statements that communications with the crew are stable, and the situation is under control. It wasn't. When the truth emerged, it shattered the illusion of Russian naval supremacy. The Kursk had been a symbol of power, but in death. It became a mirror reflecting everything that power had hidden: negligence, bureaucracy, pride. And yet, amidst the disaster, the humanity of the trapped crew endured. Kolesnikov's letters became sacred artifacts, final whispers from a place no one could reach. "Do not despair." One read, "There is still hope if they reach us in time." But time beneath the sea moves differently. It compresses, suffocates, then stops. The Kursk was eventually raised from the seafloor by a Dutch salvage team in 2001. It took months of precision engineering, cutting through steel, sealing nuclear reactors, and lifting the 18,000-ton vessel intact. When it breached the surface, after more than a year under the Barents, the once mighty submarine looked almost human in its ruin, scarred, silent, hollow. The crew's remains were buried with military honors, each coffin draped in the Russian flag, each family given the same official letter. They died serving their country, but in private, many of those families said something else. They died waiting. Years later, recovered data confirmed what the notes had already told, that men were alive for nearly 3 full days after the explosions, that tapping noises recorded by nearby ships were real, that help could have come in time. But secrecy triumphed over survival. The Kursk, once hailed as unsinkable, had drowned in silence not just in the sea, but in denial. Still, in every retelling, there is something hauntingly human about those 72 hours. The way they wrote messages in the dark, the way they refused to surrender even as oxygen thinned and temperature dropped. One diver later said when he entered the compartment he could feel the presence of calm, as if the men had accepted their fate with quiet dignity. No panic, no chaos, just resolve, the kind that comes only when all illusions are stripped away and what's left is truth. The Barents Sea remains quiet now, its waves erasing the echoes of that August morning. But sonar scans still detect faint metallic whispers below the ice. The Kursk's wreckage was dismantled long ago, yet parts of it still lie buried in the silt fragments of a machine that once carried dreams of invincibility. Every few years, divers report seeing fish swimming through its remains, slipping through the same hatches men once tried desperately to open. The Kursk disaster changed everything. It forced redesigns of Russian submarines. It exposed the failures of military secrecy. It became a story of human cost of what happens when pride is placed above life. But more than that, it became a story of silence, the kind that echoes louder than explosions. In the years since, other submarines have dived beneath the Arctic, more advanced, more secure. But deep beneath that ice, the ghosts of 118 men remain not as a legend of failure, but as a reminder that, even in the darkest places, courage still breathes quietly against impossible odds until the very last second. And when the sea finally took them, it did so gently, because by then the men of the Kursk had already surfaced not into the air above, but into the kind of immortality only tragedy can give. Their voices silenced, yet forever carried in the cold waters of the north, the place where a submarine surfaced too late, and time itself held its breath for 72 hours.